Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you still think prompt engineering is just about finding the right magic words, well, you're going to want to stick around. We're talking about how it's grown up from an art form into a real, full-fledged engineering discipline for 2025.
Yeah, this quote really hits the nail on the head. We've moved way past just copy-pasting templates from some blog post. Prompt engineering is now a rigorous discipline. Think patterns, think measurable quality, think real tooling that hooks right into how we build software today. It's not magic anymore, it's engineering.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll get into why this whole art to engineering thing is such a big deal. Then we'll check out the modern toolkit, get into the nitty-gritty of tuning for production, and walk through what we call the prompt lifecycle. And we'll wrap up with the really important stuff, how to actually evaluate for reliability and engineer for trust.
Okay, let's jump right in. Why does the shift matter so much in 2025? Well, it's not just some abstract idea. This is about what it takes to build AI that actually works reliably in the real world and at scale.
See, a modern prompt isn't just asking a question anymore. It's more like the entire control panel for the AI. You're not just guiding the output, you're directly controlling its accuracy, its ability to reason, and even its cost and speed. And, super importantly, you're making sure it spits out data in a consistent format that other systems can actually understand. Honestly, getting this right, that's the line between a cool proof of concept and a system you can actually bet your business on.
So, if it's a real discipline, what's in the toolbox? Let's take a look at the core techniques, the foundational patterns that every single AI engineer should have in their back pocket.
Okay, everything starts with these building blocks. You've got your zero-shot prompt, which is basically just a direct command for simple stuff. Then there's one-shot, where you give it a single example to show it the format you want. Need something more complex? Few-shot is your friend. You give it a handful of examples to really nail down the pattern. And a really powerful one is role prompting, telling it you are a financial analyst. It's a fantastic way to set the stage and constrain its behavior right from the get-go. Right, but what about really complex problems? That's where chain of thought, or COT, comes in, and it's a total game changer. All you do is ask the model to think step by step before it answers, and boom, its ability to handle logic or multi-step problems goes way up. And this is a big but for production. All that thinking costs you in tokens, so you're constantly balancing that need for accuracy against the hit to your budget. And this is where things get really cool. The react pattern, that's reason and act, is how we turn a model from just a text generator into an actual agent. It lets the model think, I need more info, then decide to act by calling a tool like a search API. It gets the result, observes it, and then keeps on reasoning. This is the magic behind things like retrieval-augmented generation, or RAG. So powerful. One of the biggest headaches in building AI apps? Getting the model to give you its answer in a format you can actually use. Structured outputs solve this. Instead of crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, you just give the model a JSON schema right in the prompt. It's like giving it a fill-in-the-blanks form. This creates a solid data contract, so your other systems can process the output perfectly, every single time. No more parsing messy text. Okay, so we've talked about the words in the prompt, but there's a whole other layer of control. Let's head over to the model's control panel and look at the parameters that shape its behavior. Think of these as the knobs and dials you can turn to get exactly the output you need. All right, here are the main levers you'll be pulling. Temperature is all about creativity. Crank it up for wild ideas. Turn it down for straight facts. Top N and Top K are about stability. They stop the model from going too far off the rails. Max tokens is your emergency brake for cost and length. And penalties? Those are great for stopping the model from just repeating itself over and over. And this really drives home a key point. There's no magic, one-size-fits-all setting. It completely depends on the job. If you need precision, say for pulling data out of a document, you want that temperature way down. But if you're brainstorming ad copy, you crank it up to 0.9 and let it get creative. The only way to find your perfect mix is to test, and test again. This next part is maybe the most important shift in mindset. We have to stop thinking of prompts as just little text files we tweak. We need to treat them like what they are, critical pieces of code. And like any code, they need a proper, structured lifecycle. And here it is. This should look really familiar to any software engineer. It's a continuous loop. You design an experiment, you test and evaluate, you deploy to production, you monitor how it's doing, and then you use that data to improve and iterate. It's basically CI/CD, but for prompts. This is how the pros do it.
Of course, you're not expected to build all this from scratch. This is where dedicated platforms are a lifesaver. You've got tools like Maxim AI, LangFuse, Prompt Layer. They provide the scaffolding for this whole lifecycle. We're talking centralized version control, side-by-side comparisons so you can see which version is better, frameworks for testing against datasets, and observability in production to see if quality or costs are drifting. It's the infrastructure that makes this whole engineering approach possible. Okay, so if we're treating prompts like code, that means we have to test them like code. So how do we do that? How do we move past just kind of eyeballing the results and hoping for the best?
And really, it all boils down to this question. Is your prompt just a good guess, or is its performance something you can actually measure and reproduce? Because without evaluation, prompt engineering is just guesswork, and you can't build a reliable product on guesswork.
A really solid evaluation strategy has 3 layers. You start with offline evaluation, where you test your prompts against a fixed set of data before you even think about going live. Then you move to simulation, where you script out more complex conversations to see how your prompt holds up. And finally, there's online evaluation, which is about monitoring performance with real user traffic, so you can catch issues and see if your quality starts to drift over time.
And what are we measuring? Well, the key is to measure what matters to your use case. Are you obsessed with faithfulness, making sure the model doesn't make things up? Or is it all about the task success rate? A great one is the self-aware failure rate. Does the AI know when to say, I don't know? And maybe the ultimate business metric, cost per successful task. That one tells you if you're being both effective and efficient. All right, last section. Let's talk about how all of this ties into the bigger picture of trust, safety, and governance, things you absolutely need for any serious enterprise app. Think of these as the non-negotiable guardrails. They can't be an afterthought. You have to engineer them directly into your prompts and your systems. We're talking about content filters for topics to avoid, clear rules for when the AI should refuse to answer, strict directives for handling private information, and complete traceability so you have an audit trail. This has to be built in from the very beginning. And here we are, full circle. When you manage your prompts using the same best practices we use for all our other code, proper versioning, branching for new experiments, good documentation, and keeping prompt logic separate from your application code, everything gets better. Collaboration is faster, your system is safer, and your risk of shipping a disaster to production goes way, way down. So let's end on this quote, because it perfectly captures the whole point. Prompt engineering is not a bag of tricks. It's the interface. It's how we create a clear, testable contract between our intent and these incredibly powerful probabilistic systems. It's how we tell them what we want them to do in a way we can trust. Which leaves us with this final thought. Your prompts define everything about your AI's reliability. So are you treating them like production code, or are you still just guessing? Because the single biggest takeaway here should be this. In 2025, reliability isn't something you find by accident. It's something you engineer